Alright, last but not least, we have Premier Cup Ultra. Hey guys, King of Charmanders here, and this is, in my opinion, probably the second best league I would say to go into, because Premier Cup Ultra is actually a lot less chaotic than Great League in my opinion because of the weather ballers. But then again, if you find some dude out there, some dude or chick out there that's actually using like XL Madness, which I've seen a lot. Funny story, I used XL Obama to make Legend. Well, I still don't like that XL Pokemon are allowed because the barrier to enter the Pokemon is really high, and I actually don't feel that bad because XL Obama has been out for a while. There's a lot of events where you could get Snover, so you should have had a lot of opportunities to get XL Obama if you really wanted one. There's this guy that replied to one of my Twitter posts, me feeling a little bit of guilt about that. I don't feel that much guilt about it more. But I watched one of his Twitch videos after. Here's the thing. If you're going to roast me about team building or calling me about the king of XLs, just make sure you don't leave your Twitch link out on your profile. Because when I go on your profile and you're using an XL Skarmory and an XL Politoed, two really hard to get XLs, because the only real way you could get those two as of right now is if you went to Ness. Or if you spoof. Because you could spoof to Ness. Anyways, yeah. So, if you fear the XL, where you basically have the same guy, the same dude or douchebag that replied to my comment or to my post on Twitter, this is where you'll find a lot of them. Because, yeah, Ultra Premier. Well, actually, the funny thing was he was using an Ultra because he was using Cresselia, XL Politoed, and XL Skarmory. Anyway, story time is over. Here's Ultra Premier. As you see here, the biggest fear, as the merit of that story is, XLs are going to be out there. Are you going to see crazy people out there that have spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to get advantage? Yes, you will. And most of them will be prominent in Ultra Premier. Now, I scrubbed this list, and there's actually not a lot of XLs that are actually in the top teams. So you're in luck! As you see here, for the top Pokemon performers we have a lot. There's actually a lot of even picks. That's why Ultra Premier is such a great league. As you see here, there's not anything that particularly overly dominates the other. As there's a lot of things that are within like 3-4 points of difference. As you see, Swampert, Shadow Swampert, Shadow Dragonite, Obstagoon, Excavalier. Obstagoon actually makes 2 lists. As you see here, Obstagoon actually makes 2 lists as of with the, I would say, the Gunk Shot variant and the Cross Chop and Night Slash variant. So both of them have merit in play. Someone's also using Excavalier. It seems like someone individually is using a team with Excavalier, which has Aerial Ace and Drill Run, and someone's using Shadow Swampert. Well, actually, you'll see a lot of Shadow Swamperts out there. It's actually really powerful. Anyways, on to the further team. As you see here are the top teams. Top performers are like Shadow Swampert, Obstagoon, etc. Ironically, you actually don't see a lot of them here in the top 5 or top 10. Let me double check this list. Okay, you see Gyarados, you see Lapras, and you also see Charizard, but I don't really see... Yeah, I actually don't see that. I do see Excavalier though. So here's Excavalier, but this Excavalier isn't rocking the Aerial Ace variation. So let me see. Out of curiosity, oh, here it is right here. So this is the team that's rocking the Aerial Ace Drill. Very good team as far as the opponent, the person that had the idea. So it's still a really good team, as you see here. So this is probably a single person that's probably using it, because the individual, only one person's really using this moveset. To actually win. So it's a great team though. As you see, it does really well. Anyways, the top 5 for Ultra Premier, as you see here, features 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 5 features Shadow Dragonite, and Pauline, and Excavalier. Now, this team actually is literally super close to the 6th one, which is Chandelure, Ampharos, and Gyarados. Chandelure is actually a really powerful pick thanks to Incinerate. It's able to get off its moves fairly quickly, and Flame Charge and Shadow Ball have great coverage. Ampharos is also a very powerful save switch combined with Gyarados, or if you want to use her as a save switch, it's a very powerful combination. Hits hard, hits fast, and gives you a lot of options against the meta. So as you see, number 5 and 6 are pretty, but Chandelure isn't a super common Ultra pick. I would say, it's not super, but as you see here, like these number 4, 5, and 6 are insanely close as far as rating goes. That's how good Ultra Premier is. There's a lot of viable things, so this makes it one of the cheapest, I would say the cheapest league as far as like you trying to push the legend. Because there's a lot of things here that, like, there's a lot of viable teams out here. That's what makes Ultra Premier so much fun. As you see here, number 5, I'm just going to do number 5 anyways. So we're going to do number 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Number 5 features Shadow Dragonite and Pauline Excavalier. I really like the Shadow Dragonite lead. It does a lot of damage, and you have a lot of plays out of it. As you see here, you're not going to have a whole bunch of bulk because of Excavalier and Dragonite, unfortunately. You'll have great consistency. This team will do a ton of damage. And Shadow Dragonite is a really great league. Lead. If it had a league of its own, I'd be scared because it'd probably be full of dragons. Anyways, as you see here, Shadow Dragonite beats a lot of leads. It beats a ton of them. As you see here, you wipe out a lot of them. You even have play against Excavalier and Empoleon. You could choose to like fire Dragon Claw because with Excavalier and Empoleon, you actually resist their fast moves. It's just whether or not they shield or move or not, and how you decide to play out the match. So you still have play. Just keep that in mind. But Shadow Dragonite is an insanely powerful pick in Ultra Premier as it beats a ton of leads, a majority of them actually. And like I mentioned, you still have play. The big weakness in here is probably Magnezone. As you see here, the only out against Magnezone you have is Excavalier, and if it has energy, you're probably going to die a lot. So just keep that in mind. As you see, this team has a very high threat score just because there's a lot of things that can take it down. Well, actually, not a lot. As you see here, your biggest threat score is Jellicent XL, Poliwrath, which you could probably see, and Alola Raichu. Because I don't know who on Niantic's green servers that are never fixed anyways, no matter how much you yell at them, Zebra Strike and Luxray don't seem like they're going to be in the meta anytime soon. You can see Alolan Raichu and you can see Poliwrath, so just keep that in mind. Be very careful because those two exist, as well as Magnezone and Electivire. Electric types will ruin your day with this team. Because I'm assuming your safe switch is probably Excavalier, but even Excavalier doesn't have a great matchup against Magnezone or Electivire. In fact, with Excavalier, you actually have, like, as you see here, it's kind of a neutral matchup. You can, and yeah, it's pretty dangerous. It's really dangerous. So beware of electric types as well as Jellicent. Still really good team. Empoleon and Excavalier are very easy to get. And Dragonite is Shadow Dragonite's hard to get, but you know what? If you have it, it's an incredibly powerful pick for Ultra Premier. And I definitely recommend you run this team if you're thinking. Alright, so here we have number 4. Now, this one's kind of weird. So, Gallade lead is actually really good. Gallade puts a lot of pressure on all the teams, especially if you do win the lead. But there's a lot of things you can do with Gallade, because if a CC hits, it hurts really hard, even against things that resist it. The thing about this team, I can't really figure out what the safe switch is, because yeah, I can't really. I'm assuming you safe switch into Abomasnow, just because of Excadrill isn't super great against things like Gyarados. And there's, Gyarados, Swampert, even Venusaur has a pretty strong matchup against Excadrill, so it's very strange. But I'm gonna assume that Abomasnow is the safe switch in this scenario. As you see here, it has coverage, it has little bulk because the thing is, Excadrill and Gallade are pretty squishy. They hit really hard, but they're pretty squishy. But Abomasnow doesn't have a lot of great bulk either, depending on the matchup. Well, it can take a ton of, but like I said, with 2 classy Pokemon in here, your bulk isn't going to be very high. Semi-safe, and because you have 2 really good attack mons, you're going to consistently do damage. Now, if you see here, Gallade is, as I mentioned, Gallade is a very powerful lead. You're able to do a lot of damage to a lot of things. You even have play against things like Gengar and Magnezone. You even have play against things like Jellicent. Assuming that you can get Leaf Blaze on Jellicent, it's actually not too bad of a matchup because you can break shields and come out with shield advantage, or you can do some fancy play. As you see, you beat a lot of things, so it's really interesting how it plays out. And yeah, it's a very interesting. As you see, the team has a pretty high threat score just because there's a lot of things that can beat it. As far as the weaknesses go, it actually doesn't have a lot of immediate weaknesses. As you see here, your biggest weaknesses are Licky Licky, you don't see that a lot. Darmanitan Standard, which you don't see that a lot either. Mamoswine and Mr. Rhyme. So this team is it seems actually pretty. I like it. I like the Gallade lead. It's just what confuses me is the back row, because As you see here, Obama's not, like, if you win the lead, that's great. If you lose the lead and you switch into Obama Snow can take shields, but if you have something like Excavalier, you're probably going to be in a lot of trouble. So it really just depends. I think the team works. I would have to practice with it to understand it, but Gyarados League is very good. Excadrill's new buff with Mud Shot makes it a monster closer. So I'm guessing Obama Snow's a safe switch here, but like, again, I think this team just really relies on doing a ton of damage over time and banking that your opponent can recover on it. Again, it's not very bulky, so there's probably not going to be a lot of plays you can put out of it if you lose Gyarados, especially if you have something that beats, let's see, something that beats both Gyarados and Excadrill, which it doesn't look like in this team does, unless you have one of these above, which aren't really popular. Then you could do really well with this team. I would practice it for a little bit, but on first glance, there must be a system, and this team might have an actual good, like, Excadrill is a good closer, so there's a lot of things you can do. Alright, now for number 3, we have Venusaur and Pauline and Gyarados. This is a very vanilla team. Gyarados safe switch, well, yeah, Gyarados safe switch, which is still really freaking good to this day. Gyarados safe switch, and then you have Venusaur and you have Pauline. This is a very powerful line. Anything like double community moves, and Pauline is really good in the core. But as you see here, not a lot of bulk just because Gyarados is a glass cannon. And Pauline doesn't have too much bulk either, but it can do a lot. Yeah, it doesn't have too much bulk either. I'd say the bulkiest one of this thing is probably Venusaur. Good coverage, good safety, and then consistent damage, which is mostly due to Gyarados and the fact that you have 2 Pokemon with community moves. As you see, the team doesn't do too bad. You do very well against a lot of things. You can even do well against Excavalier and Gengar, because Frenzy Plant does so much damage that you're going to do, you could pretty much bully your way through, some matchups, or create plays out of them. Now Gyarados, just run. You don't want to be into a matchup with a Gyarados or any confusion user, because Venusaur is going to get chunked out. Also, things like Magnezone, fire types like Magnezone and Blaziken, again, Frenzy Plant does so much damage that if you're facing something glassy, you can probably either force shield or force them, or like you can make some plays out of them. So these matchups that you lose against actually aren't that bad, which is why Venusaur is a very strong lead. Unless you encounter Dragonite, then yeah, Dragonite. That's all I gotta say. Dragonite's a pretty popular pick, but like that's pretty much the only thing I would say you have to worry about, that and fire types. As you see here, very great coverage on the back. Gyarados is your safe switch. Now, the reason why Gyarados is such a fantastic safe switch is because it beats a lot of things or gives you plays against a lot of things. That's why. Pauline can close out, or it can be your secondary safe switch. For example, if they lose the lead and they throw the Charizard into you, and Pauline can go ahead and farm it down and create plays for you with Waterfall. So, decent chunk of damage. Really vanilla team. As in, this team isn't super complex. I actually approve of it because it's a very simplistic, and yeah, safe switch into Gyarados, and Pauline's in the back to take on the back row. That's basically it. It's pretty dang good. Like I said, pretty simple, pretty simplistic, super vanilla. Definitely recommend you run it, and it looks to be really good in this current day Ultra Premier. As you see, your weaknesses are Magnezone, Gengar, and Berserker. Like I said with Venusaur, you can kind of create plays against Magnezone, Gengar, and Berserker in this combination. You kind of generally want to avoid, I would say you probably will have a hard time against Berserker, but other than that, this team does very, very well against the overall meta. Threat score of 636. Lower than other things, but like I said, against a lot of patterns, this team will do very well. And it's a very cheap team. You have 2 mons that cost 10,000 HP, 10,000 Stardust, and Gyarados is going to be probably an effective long-term investment, hopefully. But Gyarados is a really powerful safe switch. So number 2 and number 1 are kind of awkward. The reason why is because they generally... Actually, the thing is, what the craziest thing about Ultra Premier is that this is the only league where I've seen every rating be like points off from each other. So usually, from what I've assessed, like 5 points apart is a pretty good point percentage off. But if you look at this, there is literally only a 9-point difference between number 5 and number 1. In fact, if you look at number, let's see, number 4 through 5, 6, 7, there's only like a 0.5% difference. So in other words, all these teams work really, really well. To your discretion. If you like one, try it out, use it. You're probably going to do really, really well with it. These teams are so put apart together. But what really stands out from the top 2 is they're literally 0.6 apart. And it looks like a lot of people have actually been using... Well, not a lot of people, but it looks like a few have been using them to somewhat success, except for the second one. So this is really interesting. I use Bomb Elite in Open Ultra League, but it features Charizard and Gallade. So I'm guessing it's Gallade Safe Switch. And then, yeah, Gallade Safe Switch, Charizard Closer. Now, the thing is, all three of these Pokemon are kind of glassy. Abomasnow is somewhat bulky, but it's not super bulky compared to things like Snorlax, of course, or like Lapras. So as you see here, your bulk is crap. Coverage, safety, consistency, all good, generally good. As you see here, Abomasnow and Ultra Premier is kind of really interesting because there's a lot of fighters in the lead. Now, you're also going to die very hard to the flying UFO electric thingy called Magnezone. You want to know why? Because Mirror Shot freaking hurts. Steel beats Ice, and Magnezone's a Steel type, so what happens when you get something that's attack debuff plus Steel and it hits you once? Guess what? It's going to hurt a lot. Well, not a lot, but it's going to do a decent chunk. It's also cheap, so Magnezone's kind of your biggest kryptonite, as you see here. Neutral across the board. The Toad, the good thing is you take out the Toad that somehow goes to 2500 when you XL it. Actually, it goes to 2500 without it, but it's still really good XL. Anyways, you got the KFC does really good effective damage to you because it's a fighting type. Hariyama does as well. Snorlax licks you to death for some odd reason, just because it's ultra thick and it has superpower. Toxicroak hates you because it just punches you to death again. Again, all the things that you are weak to pretty much punch you to death. Unless it's Gallade, because Gallade could technically punch you to death. It's just its main move, just Confusion or charms you down. As you see, other than the punching in the faces or the flying UFO donut thing, you're pretty good against the rest of the meta, which is why I can see Abomasnow as a somewhat effective lead. Now for your closers, as you see here, your closers are all over the place. However, your back row has a lot of coverage. You will have better defense than the Chiefs did versus the Buccaneers during the Super Bowl if you watched it. God. Please ignore my really disrespectful comment to those of you that are football fans. Anyways, for this team's weaknesses, as I mentioned before, your biggest weakness is probably going to be Magnezone. Along with that, Alolan Muck also gives you somewhat of a hard time. It's not that bad with Alolan Muck. If you can keep it on Abomasnow and Charizard, it's not that bad. You just need shields to tackle on Alolan Muck because of Sludge Wave. You also beat Alolan Muck in the 2-shield with Abomasnow. So as long as you can catch Alolan Muck in the lead, you're alright. Rapidash's flying unicorn flaming incinerating thingy that shoots a giant fireball that generates a ton of energy but is really, really slow is one of your worst nightmares. Well, yeah, but it's kind of weird because, like, well, I can see why, because Charizard, well, just because it's Abomasnow. Charizard and Gallade can probably take on Rapidash. It's just what kind of sucks is Gallade, you kind of have to be really fancy because you don't want to see, because you are glassy, because you're a glass cannon, and it resists Leaf Blade, you kind of have to punch Rapidash in the face or bait with Leaf Blade. Preferably build the punch and then bait. So you have to be a little fancy with Gallade. If you lose lead with Abomasnow, you can kind of try to force your way through Magnezone with like Weather Balls or wait for it to use Yaltars or something like that. But your biggest whammy is probably going to be Magnezone. Again, you beat Alolan Muck in the 2-shield, so as long as you can get it, as long as you can force 2-shield Abomasnow versus Alolan Muck, you'll do pretty good. Again, very good team in my opinion. Yes, it has a high as crap threat score, but you know what? Against most patterns, this thing actually does very, very well. That's why it's rated so high. Along with that, the team's generously, other than the XL large snowman. Do you want to build a snowman? No, I do not, because I don't want to watch. I actually haven't watched Frozen 2 yet. Fun fact about King of Charmants. Anyways, this team is actually really cheap. You got Charizard and other. If you have an XL Bomba, it's pretty much, it's very identical to like a lot of other teams using Gallade Safe Switch. Not super hard. Catch the weakness in the Charizard, Blast Burn it, or Claw it to death, and then you got the Abominable Snowman in the lead, which actually wins a lot of leads. So it just really depends on what you want. So it's really up to you on how you want to do it. But yeah, it's still good. It just depends. Alright, so the number 1 team on this list is really, really surprising, and I like it a lot. You have a Gyarados League? Okay, so let's see. Out of all the other teams, the only thing that actually features a Gyarados team is literally from 1. Then you go like 15 teams down, and you finally see the next Gyarados team. So Gyarados lead actually isn't a bad idea. When I first looked at it, I'm like, wow, Gyarados is actually not too bad as a lead. Dragon Breath does a ton of damage. Aqua Tail is a great bait move, and Crunch can hit some things really hard. So if you Snorlax Safe Switch, Snorlax is super bulky, and Venusaur as a closer is always it's very powerful. As you see, this team has a lot of safety and it's very consistent. Has a lot of damage output. Its bulk is the reason why it has low bulk is just because of Gyarados. Gyarados isn't super bulky, however, it has a decent amount of coverage. So why is this team really good, you ask? Well, if you look at the lead, what do you lose against? Machamp, Venusaur, Gallade, Gengar. What can you do to them? You Dragon Breath them all down, except Magnezone. Magnezone is probably your worst nightmare. As you see here, Gyarados with Dragon Breath can actually do a ton of damage over time. Yeah, it's gonna suck if you see like a Venusaur or Machamp, but you basically just have to block Machamp's attacks, and then for Venusaur, you can kind of decide what you want to go from there. If you want to safe switch into Snorlax, you may. As you see, Snorlax has a lot of great neutral matchups against a lot of the meta. It's really thick. The only thing that would suck is that if you see the fighter in the lead, you better pray they don't have a fighter in the back. That's pretty much it. So Snorlax is a very good safe switch in this meta. Pretty decent, and it does a lot. It does well. But the thing about this team is that Gyarados gives you actually... Gyarados has a lot of play. I like Gyarados League a lot in Ultra Premier because of its ability to, as you see here, your threats, you have a lot. You have play against them. Gallade will hit you with Leaf Blaze, that's true. Alveolo chunk it down, Dragon Breath does a lot of damage. Your two biggest threats are probably Gallade and its Gallade, Toxicroak, and Venusaur and Machamp. Which actually, even though those kind of can be really popular leads, it still does a decent chunk of damage. Now, you might be wondering, okay, electric types. Yes, you have electric types. However, that's what you have Snorlax and Venusaur for. Snorlax can tank a ton of damage. It's also got Superpower and Body Slam, which is a great coverage moveset. And Venusaur can also take out the electric types. So, Venusaur, as you see, is a very popular closer in Ultra Premier, just because I use it a lot personally, just because it's that good. You resist Charmers, you resist Fighters, Vine Whip does a ton of damage, and Sludge Bomb ends a lot of lives. So, it's a very good closer, and Gyarados and Snorlax really do make a great core for it. Threat score is 656, however, it is the strongest league in Ultra Premier by a thread, but if you don't have an X-Obama or like a Charizard, this thing can do I really think this is a very powerful team that can do really, really well. Snorlax is a fantastic safe switch compared to a lot of things, and Venusaur, like I said, is a fantastic closer. Gyarados has a lot of play if you could take out whatever you're weak against, or as long as you could avoid things that do super effective damage against it, because it does a ton of damage with Dragon Breath. Aqua Tail and Crunch do have decent type coverage. So what's the best team for Ultra Premier? Here's the answer. All 5 of them actually, in my opinion, do really, really well. So the thing about Ultra Premier is that there's so much chaos in the meta, but there are things that generally work well more than others. As you see here, these teams that were created, the update was actually, when was this updated? This updated literally February 15th. So this was just recently updated. As you see, the only super dominant XL Pokemon that's even featured in here, that's Abomasnow, which is very common. But any one of these top 5 teams do very, very well. And like I mentioned, this team was literally updated today. So these teams literally outdo a lot of XL cores like XL Galvantula or XL like Raichu, XL Umbreon, XL Mandibuzz. A lot of those teams do get outclassed by these combinations. And for good reason. These combinations are pretty dang good. Number 1 might be really difficult to deal with dark types, but it really just depends what's available. Again, these teams all perform very, very well. In fact, you have a lot of these, if you want to do one versus the other, it's really up to you. If you're used to using one mon versus the other, there's really no problem with it. I would argue that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even the top 10 is a very good list to use. If you like one of these teams, I would give it a shot. The number 1 team, what I like about it is it's cheap. Both of them are Community Day move mons, and they only cost 10k. Plus, you might have a Snorlax laying around for Ultra League anyways. As far as number 1 and number 2 are very powerful teams. These teams are all particularly easy to run, except for number 1. I know this Snorlax is a safe switch, etc., but like I would practice a little bit with number 1 and number 2 just because they do those. If you notice, those combinations are very unique compared to the rest of them. Unless it's the Gallade safe switch, then you can kind of be like, wait, what? But other than that, yeah, because the top 2 teams feature Gyarados and Abomasnow, the other ones do feature kind of more common picks. For example, Venusaur, Gallade, and Dragonite Shadow are pretty common, or regular Dragonite. But again, all these teams actually work very, very well. Again, this list was just updated, so these are the top most powerful teams statistically in Ultra Premier as of right now. Now, of course, the amount of ships and everything, blah, 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 like what everybody says. However, if something has the most win conditions and the rating's super high, I have done this 7 times, and I can tell you all 7 times, these teams can take you a legend, and this is a great list, reference list for you to take a legend. One team's not working for you, the other one might work, but as you see, there's a lot of effective teams you can use for Ultra Premier. If I had to rate my personal favorite, I would definitely do number 1 or number 3. Number 1, 3, and 5. Number 1 because Gyarados can actually work really well if you put it up against something like Charizard or Swampert. And like I said, there's a lot of plays you can make out with Snorlax and Venusaur as a closer. Number 3, with the reason that is actually really simple. It's a pretty vanilla team. Vanilla teams are always good for simplicity just because they're super powerful. Venusaur and Pauline both are competing mons. Gallade safe switch. Simple, safe switch to Gallade if all else goes wrong, and then play accordingly. As far as number 5, I always love Dragonite Shadow. I use Dragonite Shadow a lot, along with Shadow Electivire, so I'm a little biased, but I really think Shadow Dragonite is still an incredibly powerful pick. Bullying through a lot of the elemental Pokemon and just doing a ton of damage to everything otherwise if you have nothing that's super effective against it. Excavalier, in my opinion, is also a good safe switch still as well. Yes, it's not as great as I would say like Gallade, however, Excavalier is pretty safe in the meta. Otherwise, you have Empoleon as a closer. Empoleon still very well. A lot of elemental closer well, and Empoleon does do a lot of damage over time. As long as you don't find a Venusaur or an Electric Lead in the back, you can still take out Venusaur as long as you can land 2 Drill Pecks, and if you have a shield. So, there's still win cons with that, but 1, 3, and 5 definitely my personal favorites. The reason why I don't promote 2 and 4 is because you need an XL Bomb. If you have that and you want to try it, by all means go ahead, but if you don't have that, there's no stress. 1, 3, and 5 are powerful teams, and they can serve you well in this meta. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets. I hope you guys are climbing to Legend. Again, Ultra Premier is pretty chaotic, but again, these teams are the factually most powerful teams you can run from sample data in Elite. It's chaotic meta, but like I said, these teams are incredibly powerful, and you got a lot of options. Ultra Premier isn't the best in my opinion as far as like analyzing and trying to what's the easiest way to condense a meta. It's very chaotic, but as you see, because of the availability of so many teams being viable. But you can still do well, and you can still do there's a lot of options basically. If you want the cheapest league you can go into that will give you a hard time, it's probably Ultra Premier. Good luck in Go Battle League sets again, and I will see you guys on the next video. Hopefully these videos help you take you to Legend.